So hi there everybody, this is Dr. Eileen Rylick. Welcome to my poster session on engaged hospitality in a synchronous online environment. So the reason that I have come to teach online is enough information for a whole nother poster session. I welcome anybody who wants to call me or email me, and I'm willing to share my progression from screaming and kicking and saying no, 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 to my full, complete participation in teaching online and getting better at teaching online and finding different ways to interact with students in an online environment. So suffice it to say is that I'm there, have been there for about 7 years now, and this poster session has provided me with the challenge of double scheduling myself on Thursday, September 25th, needing to be both in Lacey, Washington and in Pullman, Washington. So I decided, because this was a technology conference, that I would give this whole poster presentation being delivered remotely a try. So let me orient you to the poster, and then I'll talk a little bit about this project. So first of all, here's the title, and Engaged Hospitality in a Synchronous Online Environment. And you'll see right under the title and down here at the bottom that there's a QR code that not only contains this poster session, but this verbal and audio trip through the poster, but also it has all of the background documents that provide you more of the story. So feel free to scan that QR code and go to those Google documents and take a look at the whole story for this particular and specific project. So this poster is supposed to give you a glimpse into establishing a learning community in an online synchronous environment. Often a student complaint for online classes is the lack of community, lack of interaction between themselves and with the instructor. So because I wanted to be able to provide a similarly engaged environment that I have in my face-to-face classes online, I needed to explore ways to do that. And one summer, I was lucky enough to be introduced to a web conferencing platform named Adobe Connect, made by Adobe Products. So this presentation is about that, and you can see that that's basically what the abstract says. I'm hoping that as a result of this poster presentation, I have some objectives for you, that you'll be able to capture the links, reconsider teaching online if you've been resistant, contact me if you have any questions or want to chat about this, and be able to describe a way to have an engaged conversation with graduate students via a synchronous online format. So my main deal, folks, was to be able to have my graduate students talk to each other and give each other critical feedback on their research proposals in an online environment, because I had graduate students in Hong Kong, Singapore, Kentucky, Portland, Aberdeen, and I'm in Lacey. And having people geographically isolated doesn't mean they have to stay isolated for a learning community. So in order to build that community, I've taught my students how to use Adobe Connect. And you can see, on the poster, you can see that there's a picture of the Adobe Connect classroom. I took a snapshot of that with a picture of me, and we're all lined up. When the students and I are all there, we're all lined up with our little boxes and heads and stuff like that. So one of the things that I'd like to take you back to is the background and significance of this project is that online classes do often lack community. Students do complain. But building a community in a synchronous online class takes the teacher's knowledge and skills, and basically it's knowledge of adult learner needs so that you can address those, because we teach college. And you need to know your class content, and you need to manipulate that spontaneously and in an improvisational fashion. And you also need some skill in using the web conferencing platform, teaching in that web conference environment, and then a revisioning of what teaching actually looks like. Because when you are all lined up in little boxes in this virtual classroom, basically there's no difference in my facial square than the student's facial square. So it's a much more egalitarian and equality of status type of teaching. And you need to be willing to enact that new vision of what teaching looks like and be able to use Adobe Connect. So what I found basically is that when I tried to do this same kind of engaged hospitality in an asynchronous environment, the distance between replies and the time between replies really forestalled that community building and made it more like we were all isolated but kind of talking in different times, hence the word asynchronous. What I did find, though, is that Adobe Connect allows us all to gather in this virtual class space, and just being there and seeing each other move around in the camera and the box, students were much more comfortable being critical of each other because they could read facial expressions and have those nonverbal bodily reactions to somebody's feedback. In addition, there's a chat box down here in the bottom corner of the Adobe screen, if you take a look at that on the poster, that allows people to chat in parallel time and not be disruptive and not interrupt the speaker. I will say that there is a caveat there that you have to make sure that your keyboards are turned off so that the presenter is not distracted by the clacking of keys in the background. And all of that other incidental information is contained in the full documents that support this presentation. I bring you back to the QR code. So, but the bottom line here is this bolded section, is that Adobe Connect allowed us to gather, and it allowed my graduate students to feel really comfortable questioning each other on their understanding between the match between their research question, their research hypotheses, and their research approach and design, which by definition is engaged hospitality, according to Monica Helwig and John Howie, in terms of the Catholic intellectual tradition. St. Martin's is a Catholic liberal arts university. So let me give you an example of that. So let's say that a student says, oh, my research question has to do with whether or not students feel supported in their learning in an auto-tutorial type of lesson. And so since it's a feelings type of thing, the data is going to be feelings, and then that presenter goes ahead and proposes that they research that using a correlational or a quasi-experimental design in the quantitative approach. And one of my other graduate students, I don't even have to say anything. They have learned through the class the good match or better match between research questions and research approach and design. They will speak up very comfortably and right away and say, you know, to the presenter, you know, if you really want to research feelings and gather data on feelings, maybe a qualitative approach and a more phenomenological design might be a better way to go. And they have these conversations, and what I wish I had thought to do was to record one of those sessions, because Adobe Connect allows you to record your class sessions for people who are absent or for viewing later for capturing of anything that was missed. But the first time that happened and the students had that kind of interaction, it's very similar to what would have happened in my living room, because that happens in my living room as well. I was very pleased with Adobe Connect's ability to do that. So the other thing that I will say is that if you go look at the supporting documents for this presentation, I present some cautions and some downsides to Adobe Connect as a platform. And I welcome comments and ideas that you have on this same kind of technological learning, technology-mediated social learning environment. So thank you very much for listening to my podcast or audio on this presentation. And once again, I invite you to look at the whole set of documents that I have in support of this presentation. I do look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.